Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's a member of the Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Judiciary Committees. Senator, we have a very important story to talk to that you're at the center of. But before we get to that, another story you're obviously very involved with and in your committee work, what's happening in the Middle East right now, chaos out of the Strait. But regardless of whether the Iranians are telling the truth, whether it was a battleship or a U.S. ship or a tanker struck, obviously the impact is going to be felt not only in global markets, but more importantly, by working Americans in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and across America.
And that is the key point, Joe, that the price of oil is going to continue to skyrocket. People are going to pay more at the pumps beginning today and continuing throughout the week and the months as long as this blockade is in effect. And the dangers, the extraordinary jeopardy of this kind of attack is very real when the president says that we're going to, quote unquote, guide these tankers through the straits. It can't be done without some kind of military escort, which opens our warships to the kind of attack that has been reported by the Iranian press. Whether it's accurate or not, if warships of the United States Navy are involved, it's only a matter of time before there are strikes of some kind. And my fear from the very start, and I've said it before numerous times, is that we're going to have America's sons and daughters on the ground in harm's way. And obviously that military option is very much on the table, as has been publicly reported and certainly in other kinds of settings has been made clear to us as members of Congress.
So we, of course, will continue to follow developments out of the Middle East. Again, unconfirmed reports that a U.S. warship was fired upon and struck by Iranian missiles. Iran's state media says that's the case. Axios is quoting a U.S. senior official saying not so. We will stay on it and bring you the latest as we learn it. Senator, though, let's turn now to a moment from last week's Judiciary Committee hearing when you asked all of President Trump's judicial nominees who were there about the 2020 election.
Who won the 2020 election?
Senator, I wanted to be mindful of the canons here. I know this question has come up many times in these hearings, and it's become an issue of significant political dispute and debate. So with that, I'd say that President Biden was certified the winner of the 2020 election.
So you're unwilling to say he won the election. How about you, Mr. Roberts?
I'm sorry, Senator.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones.
I apologize, Senator. I have this same answer as my colleague, Senator.
Same answer as the previous one?
The previous nominee. The Senate did.
Mr. Coons, how about you?
Thank you, Senator. And I have the same answer as Mr.
Same answer. Mr. Mark?
Same answer, Senator.
I am amazed and really appalled that nominees for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench are unwilling to respond on an issue of fact. And I'm not going to try to get an answer out of you because clearly you've been rehearsed to provide a stock answer, which I think really reflects not only on your honesty, but really on your fitness to be a federal judge.
And let's recall, of course, it was at a different hearing a short time ago where Kevin Warsh, the President Trump's nominee to be Fed chair, gave a similar answer about the 2020 election when asked by Senator Warren who won it. And Senator Blumenthal, I mean, but you make a key point there. These are lifetime appointments. These are judiciary. This will be judges. The very model of impartiality, the very model of allegedly a fact-based profession, and they can't answer a simple question, which we will. Joe Biden won the 2020 election. It was not Donald Trump. He lost. Tell us how concerned this makes you.
Well, first of all, begin with the fact that not only are federal judges appointed for life and supposed to be impartial and fair, they're also supposed to be supremely independent. And what these answers demonstrated to me was a fear of Donald Trump that would absolutely indicate their lack of independence. And we tend to forget, amidst all of the chaos and confusion in the Trump administration, what he is doing to the federal judiciary, which is really a bulwark for our freedom. It's proved to be a kind of firewall, not always, but at least at the district court level, a guarantee of certain rights and liberties. And here we have a whole generation of federal judges without that sense of independence and impartiality. For most people, the federal district judge sitting in their state, whether it's Tennessee or Connecticut, is the face and voice of justice. And not only would they refuse to say that Joe Biden won the election, they had this rehearsed answer, which they all repeated. And by the way, this hearing was only the latest of several. When I've asked that question, they all have the same answer about Joe Biden being certified. But they also wouldn't answer the question of whether there was an attack on the Capitol on January 6th, which in some ways was even more outrageous and stomach-churning because clearly the Capitol was attacked, and to fail to acknowledge it seemed to me the height of absurd irresponsibility.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jonathan, I'm looking at an account that appears to be verified, social media account for CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, saying this. Iranian state media claims that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hit a U.S. warship with 2 missiles. This account, linked to U.S. Central Command, says no U.S. Navy ships have been struck. U.S. forces are supporting Project Freedom and enforcing the naval blockade on Iranian ports. That is now out of CENTCOM. So we will see and follow up on the tanker. The reports of the tanker being hit. But right now, CENTCOM is saying that what the Iranians claimed is not true.
Yeah, and CENTCOM
Again,
has been,
as we said from the beginning, not a shock, but it is fascinating that they're sending those claims out while the president's talking about peace. We'll again follow up. We're still in the fog of war, and we'll see. We'll follow up on the tanker, see if that report is accurate. Those reports coming out of the UK of a maritime tracking service, and see what country that tanker is connected to.
Yeah, it seems like there's an incident there with the tanker. That's unclear what the naval warship. It's possible the Iran state media simply lying. That's not wouldn't be new. CENTCOM has been a pretty reliable narrator here in terms of the conflict to this point. But we should know it's also possible that maybe missiles were fired upon the ship but didn't hit it. Maybe they were intercepted, which would make both things sort of true. And even that would, of course, still be an overt act of aggression from Iran as it's trying to make clear that it controls the Strait of Hormuz. Senator, did you know something? You were signaling me there.
Well, I think, Jonathan, the fundamental point here is that we're still at war. And the president's claiming to the Congress that hostilities have been, to use his word, terminated, is ridiculous. These facts illustrate why a blockade is an act of war and why we are at continuing risk of actually putting troops on the ground, and why no tanker owner or cargo shipper in their right mind would regard the strait as open, even if the president says he's going to guide ships through it. It's not the answer. And to go back to Joe's point at the very outset, prices are going to continue to rise, and consumers all around the world are going to be hurt, including in this country, not just prices of gasoline, but mattresses and medical devices, semiconductors. All of our economy is going to be impacted, and Americans will be hurting even more.
Senator, I know you've been asking about the cost of this war as well, but just to return us to that video that you were the protagonist in earlier, the question I have is, there's certainly the loyalty test aspect of this, but in another moment, your colleague, Senator Chris Coons, asked the nominee, John Mark, if President Trump was able to run for president again, even though he had won twice, and he was unable to answer. So to what extent is there not merely the historical revisionism, but also the forward-looking fear that is there a game plan here beyond actually right now?
I think that's a really important point, Pablo. Whether it's an explicit game plan or just a simple expression of loyalty, these people have no business being on the federal bench. If they can't answer these kinds of questions independently, my Republican colleagues ought to join in saying no. And frankly, there was a moment when Senator Grassley, Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the committee, turned to one of his staff. He forgot to turn off his mic and said, in effect, why can't these people just say Joe Biden won the election? And it's because of the vengeance and vanity of Donald Trump. And maybe there is some kind of game plan here, but I think they have been just rehearsed to give that stock answer. And I think it makes them look pathetic and ridiculous in front of their own family to be put on the spot and fail to show some independence.
And we recently saw, of course, Kevin Walsh as well, the nominee for the Fed chair, give a very similar, what sounded like rehearsed answer on the fact that this had been a certified election rather than that Joe Biden had actually won it. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, thank you so much for joining us this Monday morning.
Thank you.